Good morning, this is Miss Becky. I'm going to show you some printmaking techniques. There's lots and lots of different ways to make printmaking. So you can choose a way that might fit your supplies best, so you don't have to buy a lot of extra supplies. I think in the instructions I mentioned that we use cardboard. I use a cardboard that is just from like a cracker box or a cereal box. That's called gray cardboard because it doesn't have the interior corrugated parts. It's much easier to cut, but it gives you a nice thickness so that you have a raised surface. So we're going to be doing a relief type printing process using cardboard. So the first thing I do is cut my cardboard up, usually in half and then half again, so I have smaller squares to work with. Remember, you're still printing on a piece of 5x8 card, so you don't really need a very large plate, but this is what we're working on now, is what's called the plate. The plate is the place where the image is placed. All right, so I'm going to save one for gluing my pieces to, and I'm going to cut the other one up. So, real easy to cut. You can make all kinds of funky shapes if you'd like to. I kind of like organic sort of shapes. And I'm just going to cut. I think on your instructions it said you could cut to put about 3 shapes on your page if you like. All right, so I've just kind of got me a nice funky sort of shape. All right, if I wanted to, I could actually come up through the center part and make kind of a negative space. So the plate I'm going to show you in just a minute actually has that. So I'm not going to cut all the way to the end. You can if you want to and make 2 different pieces. Let's do that. Let's cut all the way to the end. We'll make 2 different pieces there. Okay, see now, when I glue this up, I'm going to glue it with some space in between, and that's going to create a negative space. All right, so I'm going to set that aside a minute, and I think I'm going to notch me out a few spaces here. So it gives me even more negative space right there, and that's probably all I need right there. All right. When I glue, I'm going to glue to the dry brown side of the cardboard, all right, because you'll notice where the printing is, it's nice and smooth. All right, so I'm going to actually glue my funky shape down to the side with the coating on it, so that when I put my ink on it, it's not absorbed. If you're working on the gray side and you go to ink it up, it's going to absorb into the cardboard. So make sure you're putting the side up that you're going to print. Make sure you're putting that where it is the coated side up and on the gray side. And I like that too, because then you can see your design better than if you're gluing it to this side and it's kind of hard to see your design. All right, so here's my design. It's getting started here. And before I glue, I'm going to see what this portion is going to look like. So you have to look to see, okay, did that come off of here? That probably came off of here, yeah. All right, so this one is actually large enough. It is going off the page, which that's okay too. All right, and see how I'm going to glue it up. I'm going to glue it up. When I glue it up, I'm going to leave that space there. So I've cut one space, one shape, but I'm going to glue it up as 2 shapes because I've cut it in half and I've left a little bit between. So I'd pinch it kind of together at the top and let it get wider at the bottom, simply because then it's going to look a little more like a funky leaf maybe, or some other shape. So cut you out another one, glue that down. I use just a glue stick, that's fine. All right, so you can kind of decide on another funky shape if you want to. I like freeform type shapes. It doesn't have to be, you know, a perfect match of anything. All right, and I'm going to glue those down. So I'm just using a glue stick for that. Hello, thank you. Get glue all the way to the end and glue it down. And this one's going to have to go from corner to corner because it's really wide. I really cut a big shape there. All right, so if it hangs off a little, that's all right. It's not going to hurt anything. All right, so I'm gluing that down. I'm pulling it kind of together at the top so that it has a little bit more pinch at the top, makes that line a little narrower. and or vice versa. Maybe this one was at the top. I pull that one together and pull this one aside. While the glue is still wet, you can kind of reposition. That works. Okay, so that's what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to make some shapes and glue them down. You won't need very many, 2 to 3, to just try the process out. So don't overstress it, don't overwork it. And then that's going to be your plate. So congratulations, you have just completed a plate. All right, the plate is the place where the image lies, so that it becomes the part that's permanent, right? That's where the drawing, where the image, whatever it is, stays, so that it can be inked over and over and over again and used for multiple copies. And you can see already as you've glued that this is a raised surface. Remember, in relief printing, the ink is on the surface, so that's where that's going to be. So here's one that I've already finished. I'm going to show you. All right, if I can. I'm working backwards and upside down for me because of the use of the video thing. All right, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my my regular markers, and they're fairly fresh. What I mean is they're fairly new, so that means that they have a lot of juice in them. They already have a lot of ink in them. And basically I'm just going to come back over those surface areas like this and ink them. That's all I'm going to do. I'm coloring in those spaces. All right, so the space in between is going to stay there simply because it's raised. So the surface that's raised, that's where I'm putting my ink. If you get a little ink down on the plate part, it probably won't hurt anything because this part is raised. All right, so now you're beginning to see my design even better. Go all the way out to the edges, try to get everything covered. And you might find that with the coating sometimes, on the coating, it will bubble up and kind of tear up. I think on the instructions I said tear up, and I think I spelled it tear up. So anyway, tear up means that because it has that coating on there, it kind of keeps it from making a nice smooth level. This one's working pretty good for this old cracker box. And so what I had in mind was kind of like holly leaves. I'm thinking already toward the holidays. Yay! All right, holly leaves with a few berries. And you can see that I was thinking like an artist. Okay, I was thinking about that negative space in between that adds an extra line, makes it more interesting. And look where I glued up my berries. I even thought about how when I cut these out up here, then I left an area that had a little curve line to it. So when I cut the next one, see those little curve lines that kind of suggest it's tucked up under the leaf? Thinking like an artist. Okay, so we're just going to ink that up. And these are nice and juicy, so there's lots of ink there. No worries, right? So there we go. I've inked up the entire plate now. Everything has a little ink to it. All right, so now what we're going to do, you can try it. If it still looks wet enough to you, you can try just pressing it that way. What I usually have my students do is to take their paper. So I'm using my art card. I'm thinking about which side I want to use. Do I want the line side? Probably not. I probably want the white side. All right, and I have just an old squirt bottle that I keep around that kind of mists things. So I'm going to mist it. You don't need it really, really, really wet, but you just kind of want to mist it lightly. Mine kind of mist too heavy, but that's okay. She says. All right, so now I'm going to very carefully just put my paper right down on top of my wet ink from there. And you can actually take and rub it with your hand, or you can use the back of a spoon and rub it this way, but you want to kind of transfer that ink to your paper. You're making a print. So you want to try, and if you push really hard, you can begin to see the edges of that cardboard. So you really will embellish your paper as well, depending on what type of paper you're using. So that's another hallmark of printmaking. All right, so when I pull that up, yep. All right, there is my print. Oh, congratulations, you've made the one of one in your edition. Okay, so that's your plate. Yay, congratulations, you made a plate. And now you have a successful print. Okay, there are lots and lots of different ways to do printmaking. So that is one way. That's one way I like to teach my elementary kids. Another way that you can do this is if you'll use that foam from a meat tray or a vegetable tray that you buy those vegetables on a tray at Food Lion or wherever you're shopping. And you can actually use that foam. I usually wash it. And then the places where there's not a trademark, like see there's a trademark. All right, so I turn it over and not use that part because whatever you have on the thing is actually going to actually show up as well. So you don't want that to show up. And then I use, when you ink it, you don't want that to show up. And then I use a paintbrush that's gotten lost here. But what I do is I use the paintbrush because, I don't know where it went to. Sorry. I use the paintbrush because it has an end to it. Oh, here it is. I just like to film on the floor. Because I use this blunt end. Hello, coming up. There we go. I use the blunt end, not the end with the bristles, but the blunt end, all right, to draw with. All right, so when I'm working with my foam, I can push down with that blunt end and push. And see, you're already beginning to see a line occur here. And I'm going to push kind of hard. I can always go back over the line again and again if I need to make it even deeper, because what am I doing? Just like the guy who was carving, I'm removing material, I'm pushing, the surface is going to be raised now because the line is engraved down into the foam. All right, and again, so I can add all kinds of detail if I want to. I can actually create another negative space if I want to. Okay, so it kind of looks like a leaf shape, a sheep shape, a leaf shape. Okay, and the same thing goes for this. After you put in 2 or 3 shapes, you can just color in with your marker. I like doing it this way simply because I don't want to ask you to buy printer's ink or other stuff that we would normally use. And on this one, you can actually color in the background too if you want to. And then it's the same type of process. You dampen your paper slightly, lay it down on top, and just gently rub it with your hand so that it kind of picks up that image. So that's another way of printmaking as well. It puts the image right on the surface. Now, if we were real printmakers, we would use a hard rubber brayer. So this is a Speedball hard rubber brayer. It looks a lot like a kind of a paint roller type thing, only this is really hard, so that when you apply that ink to the surface, it actually stays at the on the surface, on the raised surface, and not go down in the lines. Okay, all right, so all kinds of materials can be used. I think I told you in class that I often use old rubber tires, the not the tire itself, but the the tube that's in the inside. All right, so I go down to my local tire company and just ask for a something off they used to have a pile of stuff out there that was just there, should be there, recycling. All right, so anyway, you can see this one's already got a texture to it. So when you cut out your shapes in something like this, it's going to print with that lovely texture on there too. So that adds a lot of interest as well. Same type of thing. I'm just cutting out the shapes just like I did in the cardboard, gluing it up to a piece of cardboard, letting it dry. And then this one, you probably would be better off to use a brayer. Okay? One last method that you might think about is a Mylar type surface. I actually have some printing plates for my students that are made of kind of a stiff plastic material. All right, and they can draw with markers on top of that. And then we always mist down the paper again, lay it on top, and this becomes the plate. It's not permanent because as soon as they print, that drawing that they have is being transferred. So that's called a mono print because it'll only make one print. Because if they go back in and redraw, they're probably changing the image somewhat. This is a stenciling type material. I think I picked it up. I don't think I picked it up at the Dollar Tree, but probably someplace like a Hobby Lobby or something like that. It is made so that you can literally cut through with X-Acto knives and make your stencil holes. That's a way of printmaking as well. All right, so I hope that helps kind of walk you through this process. It's not very hard or difficult. Just seems a little different, and because of the instructions, I am not certain that you really got the instructions, because putting it in writing and then also showing you, yeah, what's the best. All right, so I hope you have a fun time doing a little printmaking. If you got kids, you might find an interesting way to make Christmas cards this year, or something else for your family and involve your kids as well. It's kind of fun to do projects like that. All right, this is art card activity number 5. I hope that kind of helps steer you in the right direction, and I will see you in class on Tuesday. Thank you.